In this lecture, we will discuss another one of the important poems written by John Keats, and the name of that poem is Ode to Autumn. So, as the name indicates, Ode to Autumn. So, in this poem, John Keats he describes autumn season. Now, this is the last ode written by John Keats. John Keats, you know that he has written six odes: Ode to a Nightingale, Ode on Grecian Urn, Ode to Autumn, Ode on Melancholy, Ode to Indolence, and Ode to Psyche. And Ode to Autumn is the last ode written by John Keats. This ode is divided into three stanzas, and each and every stanza contains 11 lines. So, overall, in this poem, there are 33 lines. Now, in this poem or in this ode, as the name indicates, Ode to Autumn, so John Keats he describes autumn season in an excellent way. Now, we are going to talk about the first stanza. In the first stanza, John Keats he talks about autumn seasons of vegetation. He talks about the vegetations of autumn season in the first stanza. What does he says? Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the most cottage tree, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core. Now try to understand first some lines and then we will discuss the next lines. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness. Mellow means ripe. Now, in the very first line, John Keats says that autumn is the season of mist. Means there is a fog in the sky. And autumn is the season of ripe fruits. Means in autumn season, all the fruits, they get ripened. Then in the next line, he says, first line means in autumn, there's a fog in the sky and there are ripe fruits everywhere. Close bosom friend of the maturing sun. Here, close bosom friend means a fast friend. Close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the most cottage tree. Now, in the second line, he calls autumn as friend of sun. He calls autumn the sun's son. Why? Because the sun, which shines brightly during autumn season, so sun and the mist, they work together in order to ripen the fruits. So fruits are ripened to the core with the help of the sunny sun and the mist. And that's why he calls autumn a friend of the sun. Actually, throughout this poem, sun is personified as a human being. Now, what does he say? Conspiring with him how to load and bless means autumn season, he works with the sun, and with the help of the sun, each and every tree, each and every vine is full of fruits. Conspiring with him means planning with him, means the autumn, it works with the sun, it works with the bright and sunny sun. And what is the result of that planning? That each and every tree and each and every vine is full of fruits. With how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run. Means due to this, the vines, they are loaded with the fruits. The vines, which vines? With fruit, the vines that run the thatch eaves run. Means he talks about the vines that are wrapped round the, you can say that edges, round the edges of a farmhouse. The thatch eaves run means the vines which are wrapped round the edges or around the roofs of the farmhouse. Those vines, they are loaded with the fruit. And what is the next line? To bend with apple the most cottage tree means most cottage here stands for the farmhouse. And that's why in the previous line also he was talking about the farmhouse, that the vines which are wrapped around the roofs of the farmhouse, they are loaded with fruits. Similarly, the apples which are situated outside the farmhouse, they are also loaded with the apples. And due to the load of the apples, the branches of the apple, they bend. Means there are so many apples on the branches that the branches starts bending downwards. So from these lines, you can understand that John Keats, he presents autumn as a season of fruitfulness. Means there are fruits everywhere, and all the fruits they get ripen. And that's why he says, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core. To the core means completely. And John Keats says that in the autumn season, all the fruits they get completely ripen. Means all the fruits they get completely ripen to the core, means completely they get ripen. Now what happens? To swell the gourd and plump the hazel cells with a sweet kernel. Swell means the gourd, it becomes bigger. It gets developed, it becomes bigger. Gourd is a fruit. And plump means fill the hazel cells with a sweet kernel. Kernel means substance, and even the hazel cells, which in Hindi we call it akhrot. So he says that the hazel cells, they are filled with a sweet substance. Means even the hazel cells, they get ripen. The gourd, it swells, it becomes bigger. In other words, he wants to say that during the autumn season, each and every fruit gets ripened completely. Now, what does he says in the next line? To set budding more and still more. Here, budding means a young flower is called budding. To set budding more and still more, later flowers for the bees, until they think warm doors will never cease, for summer has overbrimmed their clammy cells. Here, clammy cells stands for beehives. In Hindi, we call it chatte, and overbrimmed means full of. Now, what happens in autumn season? Then more and more flowers they grow up. To set budding more and still more means more flowers they grow up. So everywhere there are flowers and flowers. Now later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has overbrimmed their clammy cells. So there are flowers everywhere, more and more flowers everywhere. And now the bees, they start thinking whether the summer days will never end. Now try to understand. John Keats is talking about autumn. Then what's the role of the summer here? Actually, summer comes after, sorry, the winter, autumn, autumn comes after summer. And it is in the summer that all the flowers they grow. And that's why there are more and more flowers on the plants. And that's why the bees, they start thinking whether summer will never end, because after summer comes autumn, and after autumn comes winter. And what happens in winter? In winter, these flowers, they start dying. And that's why, what is the meaning? Simple. If I explain these lines, 3 lines, 3.5 lines in a simple ways, what is the simple explanation? That there are more and more flowers in on the plants. And do you know, the beehives means the bees, they have collected juice from these flowers. They have collected that juice in their beehives, and even their beehives is full of honey. And for summer has overbrimmed their clammy cells. Clammy cell here stands for beehives. Overbrimmed means full of. So even their beehives are full of honey, and still there are more and more flower on the plants to suck the juice. And that's why even the bee, they start thinking whether summer will never end, means whether these flowers will never wither, whether these flowers will never die, means there are so many flowers on the plants. So from the first stanza you can guess that in the first stanza John Keats, he talks about vegetation of autumn season, and he talks and he presents that during the autumn season there is a lot of fruitfulness everywhere, and all the fruits they get ripen, and there are more and more flowers on the plants. So this is the first stanza. Now, what does he describe in the second stanza? Now, in the second stanza, John Keats, he talks about the activities performed during the autumn season. So, in the he first says stanza, he talks about the vegetation of autumn season. In the second stanza, he talks about the activities performed during the autumn season. Now, John Keats, he presents the activities performed during the autumn season through personification. Why? Because in the second stanza, autumn is presented as a human being. Autumn is presented as a human being performing these activities. But in reality, he is talking about the activities performed during the autumn season. Now, what does he say? Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy shore? Sometimes whoever sees abroad may find thee sitting careless on a grainy floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swath and all its twinned flowers. And sometimes, like a gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look. Thou watchst the last oozings hours by hours. Now try to understand these lines. Now he says, who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Amid means in the middle of. Sometimes whoever sees abroad means whenever somebody goes abroad, goes outside of the house, may find thee sitting careless on a grainy floor. Now, in the first three stanzas, or first three, not stanza, first three lines, and if I take the fourth line also, and then we will talk about the explanation of the first four line. The hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind. So, in the first four lines, John Keats, he talks about the first activities performed during the autumn season, and that is the collecting of the grains, the collecting of the cut harvest or crop. He says, who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad, means if anybody goes out of the house, so anybody can see autumn. Anybody can see autumn sitting where? Near his store. Here, store stands for collection of grains. Collection of grains. He says that anybody who goes abroad, so anybody can see his autumn sitting by his crop. He is talking about the first activity performed during the autumn season, and that is cutting of crop. May find thee sitting careless on a granary floor. What is the meaning of granary? Granary is the name of the place where grains are stored. So he says that anybody who go abroad, so that person can find autumn sitting on his grain collection, or near on the heap of grains. So this is the first activity, because in through the first line, autumn is presented as a human being, as a farmer. As you find a farmer sitting on a granary floor whenever you go in the fields. Similarly, he says that if anybody goes outside of his house and in the fields, so anybody can find autumn sitting on a heap of grain. Thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind. Winnowing wind, do you know? The wind which separates the chaff from the grain. Chaff is, you can say, that useless product, and grain is separated from it. Nowadays we have thresher, and with the help of thresher we separate grain from the chaff. So earlier there was no such machines. So how was grain separated from the chaff? With the help of wind. So he says that anybody can find the grain being separated from the chaff. Where? With the help of the wind. So with the help of wind, the grains, they are being separated from the chaff, and due to that wind, the hair of the farmer, means the hair of autumn, they are soft, they are lifted, they are a little bit lifted. So in the first four lines, autumn is presented as a farmer who is sitting on a heap of grains, and his hair his hair are softly lifted, where? With the wind. So that's the meaning of these four lines. So first activity is described here, and that is collection of grains. And now the second activity he talks about, and that is reaping. What is the meaning of reaping? Cutting. So what happens during the autumn season? The crop is cut. So that is the second activity, which is presented again by personifying human being as a reaper. Or on a half-reaped furrow, sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swath and all its twinned flowers. Try to understand these three lines. In these three lines, John Keats, he presents autumn season as a reaper. Or on a half reaped furrow. Furrow means bed, sound asleep. And he says that anybody can found you lying asleep, where? In half reaped bed. Hmm. Why? Why lying asleep in half reaped bed, drowsed with the fume of poppies? Poppy stand for opium, because nearby there's a field of opium. There's a field of poppy, and that's why, due to the fume or due to the smell of the poppies, the farmer, the gleaner, has got intoxicated, and that's why, due to his intoxication, the reaper has fallen asleep, because nearby there was a field of poppies, there was the opium field, and due to that fume of or smell of poppies, the reaper has gone drunk, the reaper has gone intoxicated, and that's why he has fallen asleep. Where? In his half reaped bed. He was not able to reap the complete bed. Why? Due to the intoxication of the poppies, and that's why he has fallen asleep. While thy hook stand for hook is an instrument, or is a tool, rather a tool with which we cut the crop. So while thy hook spares the next swath means bed, and all its twinned flowers. As the gleaner has fallen asleep, and that's why he is not able to cut the next bed. So he has fallen asleep, and he is not able to cut the complete crop, and that's why the crop is lying there uncut, spares the next swath and all its twin flowers. Now, in the next two lines, he presents the third picture, and the third picture is that of a gleaner. Gleaner, do you know, who collects cut crop, and that is called gleaner. And sometimes, like a gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy leaden head. Leaden head means head full of burden, full of weight, across a brook. Brook means a river. And in through these two lines, John Keats, he presents the third activity which is performed during the autumn season, and that is the activity of gleaning. And he presents this activity through a wonderful picture. He presents autumn as a gleaner, and sometimes, like a gleaner, he says that sometimes autumn can be found like a gleaner, the gleaner who has cut the crop, and there is a heavy burden on his head, and that's why the gleaner is walking steady. The 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 gleaner is walking steady and carefully where across a river. So that's why the gleaner is walking very carefully, carrying a load on his head across a river. So this is the third picture he talks about. What is the fourth picture? Or through the fourth picture, John Keats, he talks about the fourth activity which is performed during the autumn season, and that is extracting juice, extracting apple juice and making cider, or by a cider press. Cider press stands for a machine which is used to extract juice of apples, or by a cider press with patient look. Thou watchest the last oozing. Oozings means drops of uh, uh, apple juice, hours by hours. And through these four lines, John Keats says that autumn can be seen sitting by a machine, extracting apple juice, extracting apple juice from the machine, and watching the drops of apple juice falling from the machine. So that's the meaning of these two lines, and that's the meaning of this complete stanza. So you can very well understand. So through the second stanza, John Keats, he talks about the activities of autumn season, and he presents four activities. First of all, he presents the activity of the farmer who has collected his harvest, his grains, and he has collected grains in a heap, and the farmers is sitting there on that heap. Secondly, he talks about the activity of reaping or cutting the crop, and then he presents the activity of gleaning, means collecting the crop, and the fourth activity he presents, that is of extracting apple juice from a machine. Now, in the last stanza, John Keats, he talks about music of autumn season. So what does he says? Where are the songs of spring? Ah, where are they? Now, from the very first line, now you can very well understand that again, John Keats, he gets lost in imagination. This is the habit of John Keats, to get lost in imagination again and again. So he again gets lost in imagination, and he says, where are the songs of spring? Though he is talking about autumn season, but he gets lost in imagination, and he starts thinking about spring. Ah, where are they? But in the second line, he comes back to reality. What does he says? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too. Thou mene you, hast mene has, thy mene your. Means in the very first line, John Keats, he gets lost in imagination, and he starts thinking about spring song. But in the second line, he comes back to reality, and he realizes that he is talking about autumn, not spring. And that's why in the second line, he says that the autumn season has its own sweet, sad music. So through the second line, he says, think not of them, thou hast thy music too. So in the second line, he says that autumn season has its own sweet, sad music. Now, what is that music? While barred clouds bloom the soft dying day and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue. Now, try to understand these two lines. Through these lines, John Keats, he talks about the scene of the setting sun, that the sun is setting with barred clouds, bloom the soft dying sun. Here the soft dying day stands for the setting sun. Now, with barred clouds, barred means covered clouds, that there are clouds in the sky and the sun is setting. And what is the effect of that picture? Touch the stubble plains. Stubble plains means when the crop is cut. So the waste things, they stand there, that is called stubble. Just nowadays, you can say that grains are being harvested, and what happens that after cutting of grains, there remains stubbles. Stubbles means a stick like things remain in the fields, that is called stubble. And thus the stubble plains, plains here stands for field with rosy hue. Hue means color, pink color. So what is there through these lines? He talks about the picture of a setting sun, that the sun is setting and there are clouds in the sky, and that's why, due to that, the light of the setting sun is falling on the fields, and it is providing the field, or it is making the field, or it is covering the field in pink rosy color. Rosy means red color. So there is a red color light everywhere on the fields. So that's beautiful scene he presents there. And that scene we realize in our real life also, that when the sun sets, you know that the sun has a red color when the sun sets, and that red color provides the red light everywhere. So he presents the scene of the setting sun, that the sun is setting and the sun is spreading its red light or red color on the fields. Which fields? From whose the harvest has been cut. Next, then in a vainful coil, the small notes moan among the river shallows, borne aloft or sinking as the light wind lives or dies. Now try to understand. Again, he talks about the music. He talks about the music of note. Now, what does he say? Then in a wailful choir, wailful means mournful. Wailful means sad. Choir means a group. The small notes moan is a symbol of lamentation. From the word moan comes the word mourning. Mourning means to lament, to express grief. So he says that the sad music of the notes can be heard, that during the autumn season the sad music of the notes can be heard, and these notes are presenting their sad music where? Among the river shallows. Means the sad music of the notes can be heard along the river, that they are producing their sad music where? Near the river. Borne aloft or sinking. Borne aloft means high, or sinking means low. Their music is getting high and low as the light wind lives or dies. Means with the coming wind, their music gets loud, and with the withdrawing wind, their music gets low. So he says that during the autumn season, the sad music of small notes can be heard. They can be heard singing they're producing their sad music near the rivers. And their music, sometimes it becomes high, sometimes it becomes low. It becomes high and low, or it can be heard high or low. How? With the wind advancing and withdrawing. With the coming winds, it becomes high, and when the wind becomes light, so the music also becomes light. Now, what is the next meaning of next two lines? And full grown lambs loud bleed from hilly bourne. Bourne means fence. Now in this, from in the next line, he says that the music of the lamb can be heard, that the lambs are beating loudly where? From the fence which is situated on a hill. So during the autumn season, the loud sound, the loud beating of the grown lambs can be heard. And what is the next line? Hedge cricket sing. That is the name of a bird. Hedge cricket sing. And now with tremble soft, the red breast, that is the name of a sparrow, robin we call it. The red breast whistle from a garden croft. Croft means corner. He says that during this autumn season, even the music of the hedge crickets can be heard. And similarly, during the autumn season, the sounds or the music of the red-breasted robin can be heard, and that red-breasted robin bird is producing the music sitting in a garden corner. So, what does he means by all these lines? He talks about the music of the autumn season. That during the autumn season, music of different animals and birds can be heard. The music of note can be heard, which produce sad music, and they are producing the music near the river. Then the music of the lamb can be heard, the beating of the bleating of the lambs can be heard, and it can be heard from the hilly area where they are kept in a fence. Similarly, the music of the cricket can be heard, and then the music of the red breast robin can be heard, and this bird is producing the music sitting in a garden corner. And what is the last line? And gathering swallows twitter in the sky. And similarly, he says that even the music of the swallows can be heard, that the swallows who gather in the sky and they produce their own music. And do you know this last line has a special importance? And gathering swallows twitter in the sky. The meaning of the last line is that when swallows appear in the sky, it indicates the end of autumn season. And that's why he says, and with the last line, he completes the end of the autumn season, and gathering swallows twitter in the sky. Similarly, the music of the swallows can be heard from the sky where the swallows are hovering. So with this poem ends, Ode to Autumn. So I think you will be able to understand this poem. So in this poem is divided into three stanzas. In the first stanza, John Keats he talks about vegetation of autumn season. Through the second stanza, he talks about the activities performed during the autumn season through four pictures. And in the second stanza, he personifies autumn. He presents autumn as a human beings, and he presents the four activities performed during the autumn season. And in the third stanza, John Keats he talks about the sweet, sad music of autumn season. So that's all about this poem, Ode to Autumn. So I hope that you will be able to understand this lecture.